So somebody asked me in comments yesterday, they wanted me to name the enemy in the spiritual, astral, magical battle that's at hand. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Tispal3. So I'm going to name the enemy. First thing I want to address is that there are forms of magical spiritual battle that target physical groups of humans. So you can buy a book called The Magical Battle of Britain. It's a wonderful book. It's very inspiring. And it's about how Dion Fortune, who wrote a famous classic of esotericism called The Mystical Kabbalah, she led a group of adepts in doing astral battle with the Nazis. So the Nazis had a very clearly defined symbol, the swastika, and they were fighting under a fairly clearly defined ideology. And Dion Fortune figured, well, I need to impose a stronger force for good, a stronger astral symbol for good over the Nazi swastika. So that's what she did. So her and a bunch of other adepts summoned Merlin and King Arthur and Excalibur and the Knights of the Round Table and the symbol of the Rose Cross, and they astrally sent the Rose Cross to defeat the swastika. And it's fun because there's a children's movie called Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which is really the story of Dion Fortune's magical battle of Britain. Lots of people normally think, okay, well, World War II was won by, troops on the ground. And sure, obviously that played a big part in it. When you get into magic, a part of what you learn is that everything happens astrally before it happens physically. This physical realm is a realm of causes. It's not a realm of effects. If you want to change something at the level of effects, you have to change it at the level of the astral, which is thoughts, visions, emotions, symbols. So it's my personal belief that Dion Fortune and her working group made a huge contribution to winning the war against the Nazis by sending the power of the Rose Cross, sending the power of basically Jesus and the resurrection and the Holy Grail and all of the mystical beauty of Great Britain against the force of Nazism, which was a very one-sided, imbalanced, destructive. Carl Jung's characterized Nazism as being sort of like the shadow of Odin, so like the repressed shadow of the Germanic god, war god, Odin, sort of rose up in a very unbalanced and painful way. And Dion Fortune sent it back down with the Rose Cross. And there's also evidence that Aleister Crowley participated in the magical battle of Britain. He taught Winston Churchill to make the V for victory sign, which is actually, I don't know, my Instagram filter is doing something weird. The V for victory is an invocation of Apophis. So it's an invocation of the Egyptian forces of destruction. So he taught Winston Churchill to make this V for victory sign, invoking Apophis and conquering his enemies with the power of Apophis. So that's one way that Aleister Crowley participated in the war. Aleister Crowley was also a spy for Great Britain in the war, which is a whole very interesting subject. All of that is to say, it's understandable to ask who is the enemy in this astral battle that's on right now, because that is how magical battles have traditionally been fought, which is against a defined enemy. In the story I just told you, the enemy was the Nazis. It was very much like Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and in the sense of, Seluna remembers, in the sense of, summoning the ancient warriors of England to fight the threat. Okay, so the kind of magical battle that I'm talking about is different in that there certainly are physical manifestations of the enemy. So I would say, for example, that a lot of intelligence agencies at work today are actually closely allied with organized crime and banking cartels, meaning like the World Bank, meaning like huge flows of money connected to globalist institutions, let's say. And the biggest reference point that I would refer everybody to learn more about this is called One Nation Under Blackmail by a genius journalist named Whitney Webb. One Nation Under Blackmail. It's a very dense, heavily referenced book Whitney Webb basically charts the history of a union between the Italian mafia and the Jewish mafia, with the CIA, with the founding of Israel and Mossad, with what turned into the Jeffrey Epstein blackmailing operation. And this permeates government. There's a foreign lobbying institution called AIPAC that owns pretty much all of our Congress. All of the United States Congress receives donations from a foreign country. That should not be legal. In fact, JFK was trying to make it illegal right before he was assassinated, which the recent release of the JFK files emphasized again. So anyways, if you want to learn more about the precise details and the human faces and organizations, before he died, JFK gave a speech about how there's this many tentacled covert organization that's operating behind the scenes, that has all sorts of different symbols, that has all different sorts of masks, that identifies itself in all different sorts of ways and changes, and has become this amorphous, really creepy thing that is a mix of extreme organized crime, human trafficking, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, intelligence agencies, and corporate industry. So what I'm trying to say is there's no one unified flag that all of this is flying under. Where does Russia fit in? Because it seems multifaceted, asks Professor Bengted. I'm not exactly sure. Russia wasn't the main focus of the Whitney Webb book. I'm sure there's things to do with Russia. But what I'm trying to say is there's things all over the place. It's this many tentacled, wiggly thing. There's not a single enemy in the sense that there was in World War II, where there was this clearly defined symbol, the swastika. There was Hitler and his bunch of Nazi occultists to fight, and Dion Fortune could just fight there. It's not like that. It has gone after World War II. The enemy wasn't completely vanquished. It went underground. The US absorbed so many Nazi scientists. Look up Project Paperclip. If you learn more about the CIA, the Bush family was intimately involved in funding Nazi projects. And then, of course, two of the Bushes became our president, and one of them was the leader of the CIA for a long time. And it goes really deep. There was a CIA coup when JFK was assassinated, and every president since then has been controlled in a lot of ways by the CIA. So what am I saying? I'm talking about this from an American angle, from just sort of the point of view that I have right now. But this has tentacles. It has impacts all around the world, on every continent. And sure, there's stories and histories and organizations that I have zero idea about that have plenty of nefarious participation in all of the stuff that's been going on. So we're not looking at the enemy as human organizations. St. Paul in the New Testament said, "We are fighting against powers and principalities and wickedness in heavenly places. We must put on the armor of God." So powers and principalities. He was talking about forces, celestial, astral, spiritual forces that impact humanity and that keep humanity stuck in grooves that make us dangerous to each other, that make us hurt ourselves. Essentially, they're grooves of forgetfulness. So I like to say that the battle at hand, a lot of people characterize it as a battle between good and evil. I understand that characterization, but I think that's less than helpful, because the human mind has a tendency to project evil onto others and then to become evil itself as it's fighting the evil others. And I think we can see that in part in almost every war around the world. There's this energy of grievance and resentment that keeps murderous atrocity happening. This engine, if you look at what's happening in the Middle East right now, there's a people that deeply suffered, was deeply heinously injured, and now they're deeply heinously injuring another group of people. And humanity we've just been doing this for, thousands of years. So what I'm saying, I like to characterize the spiritual battle as a battle of coherence versus incoherence. Or another way of saying that is a battle of remembering versus forgetting, or a battle of integration versus disintegration, or a battle of syntropy versus entropy. So I think that these ways of characterizing it are more useful because they point to what we really need to do. This battle, I see it as being twofold. So on the one hand, we need to go to war, so to speak, with the tendency within ourselves to project the darkness, the hatred, the envy, the resentment within ourselves onto others and be like the bad guys out there. And if you don't think that you do that, I would really ask you to go within and self-examine and question that, because pretty much every human who's not completely enlightened does that. And it takes the form of being in a relationship with somebody, any kind of relationship, and thinking, oh, I could be happy if only that other person changed. So if only my boss changed, if only my partner changed, if only my child changed, if only my friend changed, if they changed, then I could be happy. Thinking that way means that you're projecting onto them that they are making you unhappy, which means that they're the bad guy, they're the source of the pain and the wrongness. And this is just never really true. We are all microcosms of the macrocosm. Pain, lack, alienation, feelings of not good enough, feelings of being separated from God or nature, or whatever you want to call it, that is inside all of us. And we have to deal with it inside. And outside situations can evoke it, can bring it up. But if we stay in the hating and the blaming of those outside of us and being like, these people in that political group, this person in this relationship did this to me, that victim stance, which, by the way, is extremely encouraged by all of these crazy intelligence organizations and the psychological operations that they do. So we're in what's called fifth generation warfare. We're in psychological warfare. Obviously, there still are physical wars tragically happening in some parts of the world, but the main warfare that's going on is on the internet, and it takes the forms of memes and ideologies. And one of the primary games, and it infiltrates both right and left, it infiltrates everywhere, is this game of victimhood. Of the I've been oppressed, I've been wronged, and I'll feel better when you change. I'll be better when you fix it. I'm fine. All of you out there need to change to suit me. That attitude is the attitude of victim consciousness. That attitude, as we saw in communist China, when the oppressed killed 100 million people, the working class killed 100 million people in the bourgeoisie who was oppressing them, and then they got communist China. That's where that attitude leads. That attitude doesn't lead anywhere good. Humanity is at a crisis point right now. We're at a crisis point where we're being asked to completely evolve out of that victim consciousness. And that takes a huge amount of forgiveness. That takes a huge amount of love. That takes a huge amount of compassion for ourselves and others. That takes a huge amount of really being honest with ourselves and really seeing how we are playing out these patterns in our own lives, how these patterns play out world historically, and how both in our own lives and world historically, they don't lead anywhere good. They don't lead to unity and harmony and connection and renewal. They lead to greater alienation, mental illness, depression, drug addiction, broken families, broken communities, devastated parts of the world. That's where all of this leads. That's where the human tendency to project its evil outside and fight it outside leads. So a huge part of really true battle magic for this new Aquarian age that's dawning is the withdrawal of one's own projections, the recollection of projections. So, Carl Jung said that shadow integration was the journeyman's work of individuation, and that integration of the animus and the anima, or rather differentiation of the animus or anima / the withdrawal of projections, is the masterpiece of individuation. So I believe that we humans are being called to do this masterwork of individuation, which, and by the way, the anima, the animus, that is the contrasexual part of the unconscious that projects onto other people. So Jung said that we can learn the most about our projections in relationships with members of the opposite sex. So a woman will tend to project her animus onto a man will tend to project his anima onto a woman. And all that means is projecting all of your unconscious, unintegrated, angry, resentful, weird stuff onto other people, usually in this intimate context, members of the opposite sex. And of course, it also functions, gay or queer relationships, although the dynamics are a little bit more complex. But basically, we project. And thank you for all of you who are enjoying what I'm talking about. I'm glad that this is hitting home. Professor Bongan, this is the Earth game, all of this. All of this swirling round and round, but the Earth game is being asked to transform right now. We are being asked to go through a maturing. So humanity has been in a childhood and then an adolescence. And we've been in this adolescent period for a long time, for thousands of years. And basically, it's time to grow up. And that means realizing ourselves as a collective consciousness instead of as a collective unconsciousness. So what do we keep unconscious? The things that we're ashamed of, the things that we think make us bad and wrong, the things that we believe nobody else would approve of us or agree with us if they knew about. And yet we all have the same things, like I just said about this anima stuff. Carl Jung said that the same fight happens in every house around the world. Men and women are having the same fight because they're in the same unconscious projections everywhere. And I think that that's really true. I think we're all much less like special snowflakes than we would want to believe, which is that there's, in a lot of ways, we're just run by these autonomous programs that, like I said, see ourselves as victims, feel resentful, feel alienated, feel hateful, feel violent. And the key to this is beginning to recognize. So I'll talk a little bit more about this with recollecting projections, and then I'll talk about the second part of the battle magic, which is theurgy, which is doing battle on the astral plane. So to recollect projections involves realizing it's like everybody is wearing a broken virtual reality headset, okay? And the headset turns on when you're not aware of it and just starts distorting your perceptions of other people. Just starts randomly showing you things that feel to all the world like the other person is making me upset. They're doing this horrible thing to me. And the trick is to realize that we are wearing these broken virtual reality headsets that just turn on without our awareness and begin to get really curious about our own judgments and the ways that we construe other people and the world, and start to do deep inquiry. And I'll tell you a little bit about this with my husband. So I've mentioned before that I have something called the serial killer aspect in my 7th house. I have Mars conjunct Pluto in Scorpio in the 7th house, which is the via combusta, which is the most negative part of the zodiac, and astrologers call it the serial killer aspect because some serial killers have had it in their charts. I think the John Wayne Gacy in his chart. And I've had dreams of serial killers. I've had dreams of murdering people. I've never actually murdered anyone or done anything like that, by the way, just to let you know. But I know that I have this in me. It's very sexual. It's very hateful. It's very obsessive. It's very violent. And he doesn't have it in him. But when I get triggered, when my broken virtual reality headset turns on, he'll just say something a little bit rude or a little bit irritated. And like my unconscious projection will construe it as like, some horrible, terrible thing, because I'm projecting this violent serial killer energy that's within me onto him. And I'm seeing it out there like it's a part of him. It's not a part of him. It's a part of me that uses whatever his normal human, grumpiness as like a hook to like hook into and then project it back. So, what I've had to do in order to maintain love and connection in my marriage is get really honest with myself when this projection comes on and get really honest that I'm the one who has these hateful, violent impulses and not him. It's not him, it's in me. And as I do that, it's been this deep, deep, deep psychedelic trip of coming to terms with these evil, aggressive energies within myself and coming to terms that they're part of reality too, and finding greater and greater love and acceptance for these energies, which doesn't mean that I have to act on them. And in fact, as I get greater love and greater acceptance for them, I project them less and they cause less havoc in my life and my relationships. So, yes, the hook. There's always a hook for projections. In other words, there's always some quality in the other person that is really there, that is like some very small version of the projected quality. But the unconscious hooks into that actual quality and just like warps and amplifies it out of all proportion so that we're not really seeing the other person for who they are and what they intend. Instead, we're seeing our misconstrual of them. And it happens literally all the time. Human relationships are filled with this. And there's a great book on it that I highly recommend. I've read it about 100 times myself. I think that everybody could benefit by reading it. It's very well written. It's called Projection and Recollecting in Jungian Psychology by Marie-Louise von Franz. Jenna's asking, how does that work with narcissistic dynamics? Well, I'll tell you, Jenna, which is that lots of people who imagine themselves as empaths are highly narcissistic, and that their narcissism just manifests in a self-effacing, codependent way instead of a self-aggrandizing, externalized way. But it's also narcissism in that it's not actually attuned or open to the reality of the other. So like one of the things that I think about a lot is how much liberals hate Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump is obviously a narcissist, the great orange one with his giant Trump logos and his platinum plated toilets and his massive self-congratulation. Obviously, that's narcissism. I deeply identified as a liberal, and I deeply thought and hated Donald Trump's narcissism all the time. And what I didn't realize was how narcissistic I was, because as a liberal, I thought that I knew the solution to everybody else's problems. Everybody who voted for him was just an idiot who didn't understand anything. I knew what they should really do and want. I knew it was so narcissistic. And anyways, that's just my little theory about why liberals hate Donald Trump so much, is because he reflects their narcissism back to them in a way they can't stand. What am I trying to say here? Okay, so projection. It's a real active thing. So those were some little stories about it. I could go on all day about projection. But so learning to recognize and recollect our projections for our own sake so that we stop destroying our own relationships. The divorce rate is sky high. People say they're lonelier than ever before. Generation Z apparently can barely form a relationship with anyone. Addiction, suicide rates, sky high in the developed world. This has to do with projection and not knowing how to recollect it and take responsibility for it and stop blaming the other and realizing that the scary other is within. So Battle Magic, the course Battle Magic, which I wrote last year and which I'm going to be offering again pretty soon in a few weeks, goes into this in depth. And like I said, you can read that Marie-Louise von Franz book, Projection and Recollection in Jungian Psychology in the meantime. So dealing with the withdrawal of projections on a personal level, because it's only when a huge amount of us on a personal level learn how to withdraw our projections in our intimate relationships that we'll be able to start withdrawing our projections at a geopolitical level, withdrawing our projections. We project both our power and our powerlessness onto others, and we have to learn to stop doing that. Susan asks, do you and your husband now refer to this triggering when it happens? Does it somewhat neutralize its effect if you both acknowledge? Susan, yes, hugely, absolutely. So I used to be able to stay in this for like weeks or months. It was horrible. It was like a form of, really an extreme form. Projection can be like psychosis. That's why it's the serial killer aspect. We do acknowledge it. He'll be like, it sounds like you're triggered. I'm going to walk out of the room because you're projecting onto me. And I'll be like, I'm not projecting. And he'll just walk out of the room. And then, I'll sit there in silence and, I'll feel into it and I'll be like, he's right. I'm projecting. And usually it takes me a few hours to work on it and really calm down and really reintegrate it. But then I do. And then what used to be a horrible, you know, could consume a whole season of life in horrible misery, gets dissolved in a couple of hours. So it's major progress. It is major, mucho sanity. But anyways, what I'm saying is I'm not alone in this. I'm sharing about it so openly because I truly believe it's not a unique Carolyn problem, although maybe Carolyn does have a uniquely acute manifestation of it. But everybody does this, and it negatively affects all of our relationships, and it's clearly tearing us apart. It's tearing apart the fabrics of society. So anyways, we need to learn to stop doing this on a personal level so that we can stop doing this on a societal level. And, I think so Neptune is about to go into Aries, which when Neptune goes into Aries, usually the last time Neptune went into Aries, let's just say the Civil War broke out. So it's an individuating energy. And that's what the withdrawal of projections is. Oh, Ruan, hi, long time no see. Individuation is the withdrawal of projections, is a huge part of it because it's coming to recognize one's own indivisible wholeness. So keeping projections going is something that the immature ego does in order to maintain its image of itself as being only good. So everybody likes to fantasize that they're good and other people are bad. That's the basic ego fantasy. I'm the gooder, you're the wronger. And like I said, it's an immature ego strategy. It's not deep, individuated, self-responsible stance. So like I was saying, Neptune and Aries, this individuation energy. So when Neptune went into Aries in the 1860s, there was the Emancipation Proclamation. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. So there was this energy of emancipation, this energy of individual freedom of like, wow, it's super wrong to keep human beings as chattel slaves. So let's release them. And then, of course, the South was like, no, that's our whole economic institution. We're going to go to war with you. So these two energies, the Neptune and Aries, is this freedom and it's this fight. Like, there's people who don't want freedom to happen. So we're looking at another civil war. Well, I think it's going to be different this time. I started off this chat talking about the many tentacled intelligence agency, organized crime, military industrial banking complex that JFK spoke about, which killed him. I think the war right now looks shaping up to be a war that looks a lot like localists versus globalists. So we're starting to see the disintegration of the cultural myth that evolved in the wake of World War II. Part of the cultural myth in the wake of World War II was nationalism is completely evil. Look at how evil nationalism is. Nationalism produced the Nazis who did all of this horrible genociding murder. We must stop all nationalism. We must start dissolving borders, all borders of immigration and economics. Everything has to be globalized. And that was the narrative under which the Democratic Party came into its current shape. Again, speaking from my vantage point in the United States, like there's been this huge deindustrialization in the United States. Like I grew up in Pittsburgh. All of the steel mills are now in China. All of the jobs that were used to be in Pittsburgh are now in China. The whole Rust Belt, Appalachia, got like completely wiped out, right? And then the opioid epidemic, which was also brought in by these globalist pharmaceutical corporations, which are actually just drug cartels. I feel like we should call them what they are. The pharmaceutical corporations are just drug cartels. And they brought in the crack epidemic into Black communities. They brought in opioids and crack. This was all our own intelligence agencies, our own government brought in these drugs and sold them to raise funds for things like their coups. They're taking over other governments in other countries. It goes so deep. But anyways, again, though, that's sort of talking about the human level. The deeper level is what I'm interested in, which is this level of this tendency within the human mind to think I can make myself better by getting that bad guy out there. I can make myself safer by attacking that person out there. I can benefit at the expense of others. I can steal from others. I can enslave others. I can take from them and I can benefit. That's this deep, deep sickness in the human mind that we are being asked to grow out of. So I said some about the recollecting of projections. So that's one side of battle magic. And then the other side of battle magic is actual astral theurgic operations. So using symbol, using emotion, using color, using visualization, using divine names, invoking angels. So I learned this form of battle magic. It's called the sphere working. And I learned it in a dream from an adept named Florence Farr. So Florence Farr died about 100 years ago. She was an adept in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. She was one of its leading members. She was meditating one day in the British Museum, and she received a psychic contact from a mummy in the British Museum. So this is a fun magical history story that I'm sharing with you. She started receiving psychic communications from a mummy in the British Museum. And the mummy in the British Museum told her, I was a scribe at the Temple of Amun-Ra. And there was a magical working that we did in order to maintain peace and harmony on Earth, in order to maintain balance within the universe, and it's called the sphere working. So Florence Farr received this transmission from this ancient Egyptian adept, and Florence Farr had a group called the Sphere Working Group. You can look it up. There's stories about it online. You can also read Women of the Golden Dawn by Mary K. Greer has this story. I didn't know any of this. I was doing a lot of Golden Dawn style magic one summer, a few summers ago. 2 hours of theurgical practice, so lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, invoking ritual of the hexagram, greater invoking ritual of the hexagram, the celestial lotus, which is just hours of invoking, chanting angel names and drawing pentagrams and calling down divine power. And if you're curious about that, there's a great book called High Magic by Damien Eccles. And basically I recommend everything that Damien Eccles has to share. He's a really genius practitioner and teacher of this form of Western esotericism. And I received some one-on-one mentoring from him. And I was doing that. And I had this dream one night after months of doing that I was in, I would call it a Holy Grail dojo. It looked like it was this round, there was a dome, the walls were white, there were mats on the floor. The walls were covered in all this heraldic imagery like lions and unicorns and very, King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table stuff. There were, axes and spears and everything on the wall. And there was this kindly older woman with, she had long hair like mine, but it was gray, white, and it was in a bun on the top of her head. And she started teaching me how to do a battle magic ritual to integrate the unbalanced forces in the world and bring coherence, bring integration, bring balance and harmony into the collective consciousness. So she taught me how to do this ritual, and that is the foundation of battle magic as I teach it in the battle magic course. So in the battle magic course, we build up to learning the full sphere working ritual, because this full sphere working ritual is quite advanced. It's quite complex. It was only done by people who received tons of initiation into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So I was kind of shocked that she wanted me to teach it publicly, but she said, there's no time. You have to do it now. As many people as possible have to be doing this. It is urgent. And she conveyed to me that unless this integrating, balancing work is done by human magicians, humanity's energies will become unbalanced to the point that we will delete ourselves in one way or another, whether it's with nuclear weapons, whether it's with some kind of AI apocalypse, whether it's with some kind of other sort of war. So we started doing the sphere working last year, and it's been amazing. I experienced absolutely amazing influxes of grace and beauty and healing in my own life. Many of the people who participated in Battle Magic, I'll be sharing via email, and I guess probably somewhat on this platform, testimonials from the people who participated in Battle Magic last year. And many of them are still doing the sphere working every Sunday. Thanks. Because it brought in huge positive changes in our lives in ways that exceeded my own expectations. Everybody's expectations were wildly exceeded. And we saw positive developments, what I would call positive developments, in the form of nuclear war not happening in the form of there, at least I know that the war in Gaza hasn't stopped tragically, but at least there was a ceasefire for a while. And in the form of civil war not breaking out in the US surrounding the election, which were all possibilities. So the thing about this kind of battle magic is it's not like a wham bam, you get the satisfaction of seeing your enemies fall down bloodied. Instead, it's like trench warfare. It's you're digging trenches to prevent the enemy from taking ground. So it's defensive in a lot of ways. And what it's doing is it's creating, so I'll just tell you what it entails. It entails magicians all around the world astrally assuming various stations on the Tree of Life. So you're projecting a whole Tree of Life glyph all around the globe. So maybe you're familiar with the Tree of Life glyph. If not, you can look it up. I don't have an easy way to show it to you right now, but you're inhabiting these different spheres, which represent different parts of consciousness. It's a map of consciousness. And there's a place for everything. There's a place for lust. There's a place for aggression. There's a place for love. There's a place for, mercy. All of these have their place. And the trick is balancing them and bringing them into harmony. So each magician enters a specific sphere, enters the astral atmosphere of that sphere with the color and the emotional energy and the names, the divine names associated with that sphere, and synchronizes at a specific time. We usually do it Sundays, Sunday afternoons. And then, so there's this creating this synchronizing, integrating pattern all around the globe, which is the new sphere. So if you've ever heard this term, new sphere, Teilhard de Chardin used to talk about it. It's basically the sphere of the mental, emotional, spiritual sphere of humanity that encircles the globe. So we're working in the new sphere to put a pattern of coherence and harmony and integration and balance and acceptance of all of the energies and just balancing them out. Aggression gets balanced out with mercy. Lust gets connected to love. The thinking mind gets connected to the emotional mind. So what evil comes from is when these energies, which all have their natural place, which all have their natural wholesome function, when one of them gets like disconnected from the other ones and starts operating in a totally disconnected way. So, the rational thinking mind is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do abstract mathematics and science and contemplate things philosophically and objectively. But I've heard people make philosophical, rational, objective arguments justifying killing thousands of children. It's horrible that the rational mind has to be linked to the feeling mind, that they have to be together. Likewise, I just think it's, our culture has become completely obsessed with this kind of pornographic sexuality. Pornography is more freely available than ever. And it's just saturated everything. And lots of young men are having their lives, derailed by this. Pornography and video games. They're freely, widely available. They're socially acceptable, even to a large extent. And, they're disconnecting lust from love. So again, with this Tree of Life visualization, we're connecting the energies of lust, desire, generation, up to the energies of the heart and truth and beauty and goodness. So, and likewise, the energies of aggression. There's martial warrior energies that are important. There needs to be, sometimes there needs to be a hard no. There needs to be boundaries. There needs to be repercussions for violating other people. That energy has its place. But when that energy is completely unbalanced from mercy, that energy is completely unbalanced from a larger loving perspective, again, things get really horrible really fast. And there's this unchecked vengeance and this unchecked authoritarianism and all sorts of things. So again, it's about balancing. It's about everything has a place and everything needs to be balanced with everything else. It's not about singling something out and saying, we must eliminate this. This is evil. It's not like, oh, we have to eliminate the rational scientific mind because it created drones and they're killing children with drones. No, it's not about that. It's about the rational scientific mind, and its creations have to be linked to the emotional wisdom and the heart and the truth. It's not about, oh, we have to eliminate all, all aggression, absolutely all violence everywhere must be eliminated. It's not about that. It's about that kind of energy and force has to be in service to something higher. It has to be in service to justice and truth rather than just a completely, on a rampage kind of thing. So anyways, that is the way that battle magic works. It's a battle for integration. It's a battle for coherence. It's a battle for self-reflection. And in many ways, so if you've ever looked at a tree of life glyph, it's also a seed of life and a flower of life, which is this connected, recursive pattern. It's a self-recursive, repeating fractal pattern. And that's what consciousness is. It's self-recursion, it's self-recognition, it's self-reflection. So when you have enough of this self-reflection and self-recognition, you stop having that unconscious projection happening. So again, I understand when people they're like, name an enemy. I guess maybe they want me to say the CIA, or they want me to say, some specific politician or some specific group they don't like, and that's the enemy, and we need to target them with astral battle, or we need to do spells to bind them or something. And I just don't think that's true anymore. I don't think that's the level at which the war can be fought. Again, this isn't about the way that I see the astral battle now. It's not about singling out one person or one group or one symbol and going to astral battle with that, like it was for Dion Fortune fighting the Nazis. Instead, it's about creating a new integrative pattern within the collective consciousness itself, such that we can cease being you've probably heard about the collective unconsciousness of humanity. We need to cease being a collective unconscious and become a collective consciousness. And that doesn't mean we all become like the Borg, like we all just become a beehive. That's not what that is. It means that we all become conscious of one another as being truly human. We stop othering each other. We become truly conscious of our shared humanity. We become truly sensitive to it. We become truly capable of acting in a way that is of service to the whole of humanity, instead of delusionally imagining that some fraction of humanity can benefit through the exploitation and abuse of the rest of humanity, which is what has been going on for a long, long time on this planet. And we are in the age of Aquarius now. And it's just going to keep getting stronger as Pluto is in Aquarius, as Neptune goes into Aries. Soon, Uranus will be in Gemini. The energies, I think everybody's going to have whiplash for how intensely and deeply the energies are going to change. And we've already been seeing quite a lot of crazy changes, haven't we? Like everything with the AI technology developing so fast. Like, who the heck knows what anybody's job is going to be in 3 years? Because the doctors and the lawyers and the artists and the everybody, AI is affecting all of us. What the heck is happening with the star friends, with the aliens, with the UFOs, with the UAPs? There keeps being new and interesting stuff about that. What's the government is changing here in the US rapidly in all sorts of ways, which we love all sorts of opinions about. There's a whole lot going on. There's all sorts of climate disaster things happening. Anyways, it's not going to slow down. It's it's going to keep getting faster. If you're already feeling disoriented, I highly, highly suggest that you get into theurgy, that you get into doing deep spiritual work like this, because not only for the integration of the collective, but for the integration of your personal soul higher self, well-being, divine guidance. Like I said, participating in the sphere working brought me all sorts of grace, all sorts of insights, all sorts of benefits that I couldn't have foreseen. So like I said, part of it involves syncing up. Magicians sync up around the world inside this integrated pattern. And then part of it involves syncing up around the solar system. So we form the same integrative web around the whole solar system. And then from the highest point on the tree of life, which is called Kether, which is the crown, which is the A, Hey, Yay, the I am of divinity, we send blessing and healing and integration down to our fellow magicians, down to the whole earth, down to all other human beings. And that energy of feeling your higher self send you blessings, of magically, astrally inhabiting your higher self, and as your higher self, sending your embodied self blessings and grace and healing. It is very powerful indeed. It is life-changing. So I know that many sensitive spiritual people feel a desire to do something to change the world, right? Like participate, probably, if you're like me, you've probably participated in political protests. You've probably written a lot of impassioned social media posts. You've probably volunteered in your community. You've taken various action to shift things, and you might have felt discouraged by how little those sorts of actions shift things. I mean, it's always good to, do good works in your local community. But for example, I participated in the Occupy Wall Street protests way back at the start of Neptune and Pisces and wow, was that disheartening. Whoa, was a single banker put in jail for the subprime mortgage crisis? No. Huge protests, not a single thing changed. If anything, the globalist powers just got more powerful. Anyways, like I'm saying, I don't think that political protests or social media posts, although they can be expressions of change, they can be expressions of how things start to shift, they're not the level of cause, they're the level of effect. The level of cause is the astral level, and you better believe that the bad guys, so to speak, the forces who want humanity to be incoherent, the forces that want humanity to be deeply forgetful of who they are, deeply disempowered, deeply disintegrated into addiction and fragmented families and fragmented communities and depression and anxiety, and those forces, whoever they are, they don't want you to be doing theurgical work. They don't want you to be invoking the names of God in an integrative pattern and calling down divine grace and healing on yourself and others. They don't want you to be recollecting your projections and taking deep, exquisite, highly aware personal responsibility for the appearance of evil. They don't want you to be doing any of that. They want you to be hating other people, blaming groups of other people for your problems, whether it's white people, Jewish people, black people, gay people, women, feminists, liberals, Republicans. They want you to be blaming some other group of humans. They want you to be in victim consciousness. They want you to feel like you don't, like your energies are futile. They want you to feel like it doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter what you protest. It doesn't matter what you do, because you're going to end up with the same bleak scene. Those forces cannot be defeated at a physical level. They cannot be defeated at the level of Malkuth. This physical world is called Malkuth on the tree of life, the kingdom. It's the lowest sphere on the tree. It is the effect of all of the other spheres. The battle must be fought higher up the tree of life. The battle must be fought on the astral, at the level of feeling, at the level of imagining, at the level of divine names, at the level of creating images of integration and healing. That's where it can be done. So Olivia says, thank you for breaking this down. I see what you were saying, that protests and resistance only work at the level of effect, but I never knew how to articulate this. Yes, Olivia. So for example, all of the beautiful civil rights protests and the Martin Luther King, his movements and the protests that he led, there was a spiritual change first. There was a spiritual, astral, complete, realization that the current situation couldn't stand. And then the protests happened as an expression of that. And they were, yeah, I mean, that's at least how it looks to me. So I think if we want to see the world completely waking up, if we want to see, freedom from tyranny, if we want to see freedom from this victim consciousness, freedom from everybody tearing, finding petty reasons to tear each other down, all of the cancel culture, all of that stuff. If we want to see real unity, real flourishing apart from the banks and the corporations and the techno billionaires, if we want that, the kingdom of heaven on earth. Theurgical astral battle work is a part of bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth. And for me, that's truly the goal. I truly believe in a new heaven and a new earth, that's what we humans are designed to bring through. That, Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. And he wasn't joking. That the kingdom of God is within us. He said the kingdom of God is within you and all around you, and you do not see it. And what he was referring to is the way that we humans tend to be dominated by immature ego consciousness, which again, he says, why are you obsessed with the speck in your brother's eye? Why don't you take out the log from your own eye? Which is obsessed with what other people are doing wrong and let's stone the wrongdoers. And he was like, no, he who's without sin cast the first stone. Like, stop judging each other, stop this petty infighting, realize a new level of consciousness, realize the kingdom of heaven is all around you. And, that kingdom of heaven, to me, is the fact that we are all in a shared dream. We're all in God's dream. We're all characters in a dream that God is dreaming. And God always forgives God's self, and salvation is universal. We are all saved, we're all forgiven, everything ultimately is healed and blessed, and the good ultimately prevails. And it can really not seem like that when we're lost in the dream. We can really get super angry at other dream characters. And to me, a big part of healing and a big part of recollecting projection is looking at somebody who I feel has done me wrong. It could be a very deep wrong. I don't know about you, but I was really severely abused as a child. And I encountered really horrible situations in my young adult life. So anyways, I've had to do a lot of forgiveness work. And I think we all have to do forgiveness work for the world in general, of seeing that whoever hurt me is a confused character in God's dream, and they're part of God too, and they're ultimately innocent too, which is to say, we are all innocent. So even the organized crime, even the CIA, even the Mossad and the traffickers and the people putting neurotoxins in the water, the people putting toxins in the injections, everybody at the level of being, at the level of spirit, belongs to the kingdom of heaven, is a child of God, belongs in paradise, belongs in the Garden of Eden. Everyone, including the devil, including the enemy, however we want to imagine that, is ultimately healed, is ultimately redeemed, is ultimately forgiven. And if this is a new idea to you, I suggest you learn about something called apokatasis. Maybe I'm not spelling that right. I'm pretty sure that's the Greek word for it. That universal salvation, which was an idea that was popular with some of the early church fathers, which later was declared a heresy. But it's not a heresy. I declare the people who declared it a heresy to be heretics, personally, because believing in eternal hell and punishment and that the devil is more powerful than God, that sounds to me like real heresy. The truth is that God became human, God incarnated, the Logos, the Word became flesh. The Logos, God forgave God's self. We were created in the image of God. God incarnated, God was crucified, God was resurrected. God said, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. Because we're made in the image of God. We are unconscious like God, and we become conscious through God. Jesus is a perfect mirror of what it's like to be a human and to suffer and to learn to unconditionally forgive anyway. That's who we all are. That's what we are all capable of. The age of Aquarius is the age of the Holy Grail. So, Aquarius in the zodiac is the cup bearer. So the cup bearer carries, what's the cup? The cup is the Holy Grail. So in the book of Revelations, there's 3 feminine characters. There's the Queen of Heaven, there's the Whore of Babylon riding the beast. She's holding the Holy Grail. The Whore of Babylon is holding the Holy Grail, which is filled with the blood of Jesus and filled with her sex magic, the wine of her fornications. And she is drinking of the Holy Grail. She's drunk on the blood, which means she's redeemed, by the way, because if you drink the Eucharist, you are in the blood and the body of Christ and you are redeemed. That's what that means. And then the third feminine figure is the New Jerusalem, the bride of Christ, who descends from heaven in the form of a holy city. And the bride and the bridegroom welcome everybody, and that's how time ends. To me, we're all the whore of Babylon. Every single one of us is a whore. Humanity has whored itself out. We have all whored ourselves out to all sorts of ideologies and institutions and personal greed. Every single one of us, by the way, has benefited from child slavery. I'm talking to you on a cell phone right now. It was probably put together by children in China, and children in Africa mined the rare minerals that make the chips. So I'm guilty of that. We're all guilty of that. We're all in it. None of us is innocent in the worldly sense. We're all Calica, that's right. You got the word right. All of us are innocent only in the truly spiritual, redeemed sense. But anyways, we're all the whores of Babylon. And right now is the time for all of us to take a big old drink from that Holy Grail. In fact, don't just drink from it, cover yourself in it. Pour the blood of Jesus all over you. In the older mystery schools in the Mediterranean, one of them was the Mithraic initiation. And in the Mithraic initiation, initiates would stand under a platform, and then there would be a bull on top of the platform, and the priest would cut the throat of the bull, and then all of the bull's blood would drop down at once over the initiate, and then they would be initiated into Mithraism. Let the blood of Jesus pour over you like the blood of the sacrificed Mithraic bull. Just imagine yourself standing under a platform, the blood of Jesus just pours over you, and you drink it, and you're flooded with it. Let that happen. Completely dissolve in it. So, the instruction to dissolve in the cup of Babylon really means to stop seeing yourself as different from anybody else. None of us are different from the child traffickers. We are not different from the evil CIA agents. We are not different from the organized crime bosses who are putting people in shipping containers and sending them across the ocean. We are all the same as them. We're all in an interconnected web with them. That's what globalism has done to us. We're all implicated. None of us is better than that. We all need forgiveness. We all need restoration. We all need redemption. And I cannot enjoy that for myself unless I fully extend it to you. And that doesn't mean we don't take protective action for ourselves or we don't stand up for ourselves, but it means we free ourselves of hate in our heart. We free ourselves from feeling like victims in our heart. We free ourselves from bitterness and resentment, and we have hearts as light as a feather. So in another one of the ancient mystery schools, in order to go on to the next life, it was said in Egypt that they would weigh your heart on a scale. Your heart would be weighed on the scales of Mot, and if your heart was not lighter than a feather, you would not go through. You would not go on to the next world. Instead, your heart would be eaten by her pet alligator, and game over for you. But if your heart was lighter than a feather, you would go on the bark of Ra, and you would live eternally. And the bark of Ra, of course, is the sun. And Jesus is the sun, solar consciousness. And in the Kabbalah, it's Tifereth consciousness, balance, beauty, harmony. You have to have a heart lighter than a feather to live forever, because you have to be aligned with solar consciousness to live forever. Because solar consciousness is what lives forever. It's the all-pervading consciousness. It's the all-pervading sun behind the sun. It's the invisible light. It's the Tibetan Rigpa. It's the clear, luminous awareness in which we live and move and have our being. And it forgives everything. It accepts everything. It loves everything. It doesn't hold grudges, like St. Paul in the New Testament. Love is gentle. Love is kind. It's slow to anger. It's quick to forgive. Endures all things. That's who we all truly are. So anyways, the battle is to wake up, to remember that. The battle is to wake up to this true solar nature of our being. So if you want, a great teaching on solar consciousness, you can look up the Sermon on the Mount. Louise is asking, do you have any recommendations for books to explore Jesus' teachings? I've been drawn to that, but have religious trauma. Okay, yes, there's a great book called The Gospel According to Jesus by Stephen Mitchell, which is just quotes from Jesus. And it's really great, and Stephen Mitchell does a great job putting it in context. And another great healing resource for religious trauma for me has been John Crowder. He's a supernatural Christian. I would start with the finished work of the cross is my favorite video of his. I think it's important to begin seeing Jesus beyond the veil of conventional Christianity, because there's been plenty of distortions and heresies in conventional Christianity over the years, like Calvinist predestination, the sickest idea in the world, or all of the abuses within the Roman Catholic Church. The list goes on and on, the Inquisition, the witch hunts. It's been terrible. And Jesus didn't do any of that. Jesus himself, by the way, was a hunted witch. They put him to death for witchcraft and blasphemy. What did I mention to explore solar consciousness? Yeah, the Sermon on the Mount is a fantastic teaching on solar consciousness, which is in the Gospels. And there's also, we've been reading from this book called Meditations on the Tarot most mornings in Lent. And it's a fantastic classic of Christian Hermeticism. And the chapter on the chariot and the chapter on the sun card, pretty much the whole book. I recommend the whole book, but the chariot chapter and the sun chapter get into solar consciousness in a really interesting way. So if you're listening to this, if this topic is interesting to you, I do encourage you to keep your eyes and ears out for when I offer battle magic, because it's a deep, wonderful opportunity to sync up with other magicians around the world to do an incredibly powerful theurgical action, which creates, aids in humanity's getting through this birth passage. It's like we're in the birth canal and there's contractions that are like squeezing us. We're babies in a birth canal. We're just going to get squeezed harder and harder. It's part of the birthing process, and the sphere working helps us get through it, and recollecting our projections helps us get through it. Yeah, speaking of movies, I really like Jesus Christ Superstar. I think Jesus Christ Superstar converted me back to Christianity after the Catholic Church traumatized me into becoming a Wiccan. The 1973 movie version is the best version, by the way. It's amazing. Battle Magic is a teaching container. Yes, Battle Magic is a course. 6 rather dense PDF lessons. They're about 40 pages each. And there's audio recordings, and then there's live course meetings where I lead you through individuation work to recollect projections, including a lot of dream work. And we do group versions of the sphere working. So we do battle magic together with other magicians all over the world. It feels really good. It's really amazing. Yes, it's a teaching container. It's a course that I offer. I will announce it here, and I will announce it on my email list. If you want to go to learn about it via email, go to theimmortalcollege.com, enter your email address, and you will be added to our list. That's the most surefire way to see it. Thank you, Maria. I'm really glad that this was helpful to you. If what I've just said was helpful to you, if you've been listening, please tell me, because I need encouragement right now. This eclipse portal that we're going through is really intense for me. So I would love it if you would tell me if this has helped you. Dizzy Miss Lizzie asks, what do you think of the Gospel of Thomas? I really like the Gospel of Thomas. I really like the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Not every Gnostic gospel, I think, is of the same quality. There's some that's really dualistic and not helpful, but I think overall the Gospel of Thomas is very non-dual and beautiful. I'll be sharing this to my Instagram wall, so I would love it if you would comment there and ask any questions, because that gives me an idea of what to talk about next time. And I'm glad we went over a lot of this today. Hey. Yes, Mola, love that wise woman's words. We're not in the darkness of the tomb, we're in the darkness of the womb. Yes, Danny, definitely Jesus Christ Superstar 1973. It is a banger. Oh, geez, Louise, awesome. Oh, DJC Beetle, I'm so sorry your 7th grade teacher was that messed up. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad. That is heartening. Thank you for these kind things that you're saying. India, I'm so glad that Existential Kink has been so important for you. Thank you, Saluna. I'm glad that you like the title. This eclipse is crazy. The last solar eclipse in Aries really messed me up. Okay, so yes, great Friday to you, Kermits, also. So have a wonderful day. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Bye, everyone.